Aside, how long can you go without getting dopamine, do you think? If you thought
I
about
mean,
it?
I ballparked it maybe like 2 to 3 days if I push myself a week. But I was discussing this with Ali and I was thinking like it's so hard to actually do that in the first place because you're just
Yeah.
surrounded by like dopamine stimuli, whether you like
Yeah.
it or not, whether you directly have like control over it or not. Like other than
Yeah.
your phone and other than your laptop or your TV, there's even if you just go out, you're doing something, you're doing an activity that's giving you dopamine.
Yeah.
You're if you interact with someone, whether like if you interact with your friends, if you hang out with your friends, or if you just meet someone new, you're gonna get some sort of stimuli from it. So
Yeah.
it's unavoidable. So how, I mean, so it doesn't make sense, you know? You can't avoid it. So to actually test yourself, can you?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. You're right. Do you also, when you do the dopamine fasting, do you also fast off food? Like, are you just doing water or?
Yeah, I haven't tried that. No, I'm a big fan of
Oh.
food, so I haven't tried like not eating at all.
Same.
I've
Same.
like I've done the Ramadan fasting for the whole month, you know, where you fast from like morning from like 5 a.m. to when the sun like from sunrise to sunset. I've done that
Yeah.
for 30 days multiple times, even since I was a kid. But I'm assuming you're talking about more of like just going on water for multiple days in a row. Is that what you
Hmm.
were thinking? Is that what
Yeah.
you're saying?
Yeah.
Have you done that? Because like maybe you can tell us
I
about it.
have. Yeah, I have. Yeah, I grew up and grateful for it because I feel like it's paying off as I get older. But from the age of 14 or so, I've been doing water fasts. It's been a
Mm,
while. It's been a couple few years actually. But yeah, you get real cranky when, when like by day 3, it's like, fuck my life. This is hell. And then you get to day
yeah.
5 and you're like, where's all this energy coming from? I'm bright, I'm clear, I'm enlightened. Um,
You start
yeah.
hallucinating at some point or anything.
I've never hallucinated, but there is a kind of like almost slightly psychedelic buzz that'll come online, as you
Mm,
get deeper into it. I grew up actually building with my father. I was kind of his protege, commercial construction up in Alaska. And there's this one
yeah.
time we were working 80-hour weeks,
Hmm.
like in the field, tool belt, packing stuff, and he went 30 days and I was there every moment other than when he went in his room to sleep, 80 hours a week working with him side by side. He went 30 days on water. It was absolutely bizarre. By the end of that 30 days, we're working long nights, like till 9
Yeah.
or 10 or whatever. He was outworking me. A month in, no food, he's outworking me. It was
So,
wild.
but so when you say no food, literally you're eating nothing. I mean, I'm trying to
Yeah.
understand this because I mean, scientifically they say you can't go out without you can go without food for maximum like what 2 weeks or something. And and
I think
how
it's
how
quite a bit more than that. Yeah, I think it's closer.
okay,
Like the clinical stuff I've seen says that it's like somewhere between like 4 and 8 weeks, more or less. It's
okay.
been a while since I've seen that research, but yeah, it's way more than 2 weeks. I mean,
And
it's at least double. Yeah,
you're obviously dropping weight and
yeah,
so you're just
yeah,
burning all the fat and that's how you're keeping your
yeah.
energy up for that full 4 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you get that autophagy effect, that cell, the death where they start, basically your immune system has nothing to do but like clean everything up. It just like, fights viruses and the bad bacteria and eats up all the fat.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
wild.
I mean, that's insane, man. I guess I'm gonna have to
Hmm.
try that soon. Just go for
Maybe,
I'll
maybe.
I'll start off with like a 1 week, 2 weeks, and then we'll see how it
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The idea is we're trying to control our, because we're just so stimulated all the time. It feels like, it just,
Yeah.
from the second I wake up, there's just always this new notification. And especially now,
Yeah.
I mean, these times, like with the news, it's so hard because I want to be so unplugged, and I just like turn it off, turn everything off. I don't want to know anything about anything. But
Yeah.
literally, I don't want to die. I don't. There's stuff. There's
Yeah.
literally they're burning Waymos right outside my house. So what am I supposed to do? Not know about
Wow.
what's happening. It's
Wow.
I have to be somewhat informed in case I need to move or do something, or I
Yeah.
don't know. But this is where we're at right now. It seems like everything in the world is so like just getting worse, but also how am I supposed to stay calm and meditate and breathe and stay zen while all this is happening? It sounds
Yeah.
impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question. That's why I do breath work. That's why I'm such an advocate of it, because this modern world is so freaking stressful. Like at any major city, if you live near any major city, there's stress. You just leave your house and there's stress.
Yeah.
But that rhythmic breathing, that'll iron out the static and that'll really chill you out. Like so much so that, and there's research happening right now around this, but like you'll get endogenous DMT dumps, where you're like fucking blissed out, right? It's a nice little break from life.
And that so breathing always for me seems to work when I'm nervous or stressed. Like I don't know what it is, but I visualize myself taking in the oxygen, pushing out the carbon dioxide. I think of carbon dioxide as like the anxiety, and so just pushing out the carbon dioxide makes me feel calm. Am I stupid, or is that something that's
No, I think you're
real?
right on. Yeah, I think you're right on. You know what I've learned to do? My biggest teacher the last 5 years has been death. Not that people around me are dying, but it's been actually the cycle. I'll sometimes say like between birth and death, there's breath. And this is like kind of hypothetical, but I think it kind of works. Master breath, master life. And you hear like the sages talk about like the mini death, right? So I do what I'll practice, and I'm starting to get it where it's habituated, but I will basically die on my exhale. I'll expire. Whew, let it go. Just like you were saying, the carbon dioxide, poo. And so you can use that as a kind of cue, that exhale, to detach, let go, surrender, die. And then it's only for a moment. You're back to life.
Okay. So with every exhale, you're just dying. It's like that's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I I learned that. So when I opened the breath studio in 2018, rode that wave as it started to trend. Actually, it started trending within like a month of opening the studio. I didn't open it because it was trendy. I just knew breath. I'd been practicing yoga and Kundalini for a long time. I knew breath was a service to the community, especially in places like LA. And and then at the same time I was running the studio, for a period of that, I was dating a medicine woman, and she served frog poison, combo, and toad venom, bufo, 5-MeO-DMT. And so at the same time, I was basically holding the container for these, people coming through just to lay down and breathe. I was, I was dating a medicine woman, and both combo and bufo put you in confrontation with death, basically. Like combo is basically, it's the frog poison, they burn your skin and it creates a blister. They
okay.
pack it with this poison. You get deathly ill within 2 minutes. You're just horribly ill. You feel like you're dying. And then it's over in 30 minutes, but you puke your guts out, your bile, everything, it comes up. And it's terrible. I mean, it was like, I want to
It sounds
say,
like it. Yeah,
It
it
doesn't
it's
sounds like
sound
you're
terrible.
killing
fun.
yourself.
It's an initiation, to say the least, a psychological initiation. Gwyneth Paltrow actually went public with it through Goop. I want to say they published at least one blog post about it in around 2019. And it was like the headline was something like "The New Craze Cleanse," like as a cleanser. It really is a cleansing
Yeah.
thing. And I forget what the chemicals are, but there's actual. It's not like, it's like phyto something or something in the poison that really purifies you. And then bufo is 5-MeO
So wait,
DMT. Are
wait.
you
So
guys? Yeah,
no, I'm following up. I'm just
yeah.
curious as in, so is this just like a non-scientific remedy that specific people would try, or is this something that has been proven, and they've done tests on like a large subset of people to say that this can be publicly used by anyone, because we want to obviously, when we want to share this information,
Hmm.
um, people want to know, like, is this something that they can try themselves, or is this
Hmm.
something that they want to take? It's more of like taking a risk, and they're just trying it at their own independent life.
Yeah. So combo is unregulated, first of all.
Mm.
That's why you can
Right.
legally serve combo. It's not a psychedelic. It doesn't make you high. I just
Yeah.
Googled it, and obviously everything within context, like there's, certain institutes that don't want alternative remedies to make it into mainstream
Hmm.
because that cuts into profit.
Big
But
pharma.
yep, the AI overview, I typed, is there evidence for combo? It's KAMBO. And the AI overview is there's limited scientific evidence to support the therapeutic claims. A frog mucus
Yeah.
ritual. But there is actual science behind it. I wish I could tell you off the top of my head what there have been studies, but it's not mainstream by any means.
It's crazy
Yeah.
how like pharmaceutical companies want to give you medicines to help you feel calm or to help you
Yep.
relax or to deal with anxiety or depression, but
Yep.
no one ever tells you just, you know, learn how to breathe to relax
Yeah.
yourself or learn how
Yeah.
to change your
Yeah.
environment to be less stressful.
Absolutely.
It's actually kind of insane, honestly, and
It really is.
I
Yeah.
feel bad for everyone who's fallen into these kinds of traps with medications because we've done podcasts on how the side effects are just horrible, and the
Yeah.
benefits are so weak, and
Hmm.
people get trapped, and then if they don't take it, they have withdrawals. I've never heard of anyone
Yeah.
having withdrawals from breathing, right, or
No
any
doubt.
kind of naturalistic, holistic yoga medicine. It's so
Yeah.
so backwards. All of society right now is like we're so
Yeah.
messed up. We're so poisoned. We're so traumatized. We're so stressed out, and
Yeah.
it's like the medicines and treatments they're giving us are so bogus, and we
Hmm.
need to like rewire everything, switch everything up right
Yeah.
now because it's like over, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It does seem like, it does seem like we're living through what we might perceive as a dystopian or really rough end times or something, I mean, especially just look at, like, you've been in LA since the George Floyd riots,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
I saw those. I
Yeah.
was there.
you've seen some stuff.
I've
Yeah.
seen too much stuff.
That's dystopian stuff. I mean, lighting fire,
Yeah.
cars on fire, burning in the streets. And,
They're picking on the AI cars, though. Yeah, I mean,
yeah. Yeah.
It's
they
like
they're
Terminator
hiring.
or something,
Yeah, they're
just
like,
fighting against AI and stuff.
I don't
Yeah.
know,
Well,
and
yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting topic.
people don't feel bad about hurting AI. I guess at the moment we don't have
Yeah.
that kind of. But those, I don't know if you've seen those little delivery robots. They're so cute, and they have those big
Oh, yeah.
eyes.
Yeah.
Those,
Yeah.
no one touches those. No one hurts those. But it's
Yeah.
the Waymos, those big,
Yeah. Yeah.
driverless cars, AIs. I don't know. I mean, AI is one of those things that it's like, I know how much potential it has to make all of our lives so better, but I just don't trust the people in control of
Yeah.
it to do the right thing and regulate it the right ways to help the transition. Because right now, what's going to happen is that no one's going to have jobs. I mean, all of my
Yeah.
friends right now are out of jobs. The film industry, the gaming industry, all kinds
Yeah.
of so many people are out of jobs and have been for so long, and the future's so bleak. And it's like, what kind of jobs can you do when there's AI? I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems like very little.
Yeah. Yeah, it does seem, I don't know where you guys are at on that, but I've been kind of tracking. I had this kind of wild, I guess I would call it like an awakening experience when I was 27, which has now been 15 years. At the time I was running a nightclub and kind of in a very materialistic phase of life. Out of nowhere, slipped into this altered state. Since this moment, I got really I read The Singularity is Near. I got really into technology and understanding human consciousness and semiotics. And it's to me, it's very clear, if not obvious. I think, I probably side, regardless of your opinions of him, I probably side with Elon's estimate that it's like 80% chance we're heading towards utopia, 20% chance it could go bad. But without a doubt, it seems now, and I didn't feel this way even a year ago, but like it seems like we're going to go through at least 4 to 8 years of real tough times. Like even some of the most heroic entrepreneurs on earth, for me, like my heroes, super high integrity, mission driven entrepreneurs, they're not, they're leveraging all these technologies, but they're not saying, tax me, guys. They're just making $100 million more this year. But
Yeah,
one
that's
thing
true.
that is interesting on that note, just before I close up that thought, Peter Diamandis. Are you guys familiar with Peter Diamandis?
No.
He's
No.
actually probably my number one entrepreneurial hero.
Mm.
Hmm.
He founded something called the X Prize. Now it's been probably 15 years ago. Basically, they raise philanthropic money, millions of dollars, and then they pick a problem in one of it's like 8 different sectors: art, not art, but environment, education, et cetera, et cetera. And then they find a problem that would be a high leverage problem to solve, and they'll be like, we're going to give $10 million away to whoever can solve this specific problem. Anyhow, Peter said recently,
Hmm.
he said, the last jobs, and there's economic agency, which is like if
Mhm.
you could be doing great and really positioned well with AI, but if nobody can afford it, it doesn't do any good. But he says like the last jobs will be entrepreneurs, basically.
So that means people will be starting to use AI to start their own businesses. Is that like the process of it, like the future?
Yeah, yeah. There
I
there
can
will
see
be
that
nothing
happening.
to produce anymore. It will just all be ideas, basically.
But
Hmm.
question about like
They,
consumers, because me and Syed had a debate about this yesterday. Is like, okay, so right now you're gonna have people that are gonna benefit a lot during this time and make a lot of money, but there's a lot of people that
mm,
are not savvy enough to catch up, and they're gonna
Yeah.
be the have-nots. But then, how does that work? How does the system work where you like? I mean, you're gonna have a business, but who are you gonna sell things to, right? If
Yeah.
people don't have the money and are broke and
Yeah.
desperate, you
It
need
seems,
everyone to succeed, right, in order to for
yeah.
this to keep going.
Yeah, at
And
least to be able to buy groceries and,
yeah,
live in a home. And it does seem pretty important for there to be some kind of a UBI here coming soon.
yeah, totally
Yeah.
believe in that too. Yeah, that's like
yeah,
a
that's a good
minimum.
point, actually.
Hmm.
Or we could have a system where it's like all people are just entrepreneurs, but at the same time they're clients for each other. So like then people just start working on through collaborations and then creating um, like then they would be working in collaboration with businesses that are similar to them or in similar industries. And maybe the small time entrepreneurs would just buy their groceries the same way as like the large, as like m- people with like Elon Musk and Bill Gates, where they just use their debt or like leverage their debt or their business stocks, whatever, to buy to have like capital in the like when what's the thing what they do when they use their to take they take out loans based on their stocks to kind of like have spending money on their
Mm.
visas and whatever and whatnot.
Is
So
is that
then
like a
everyone would be doing
refinance
that.
or no? No, it's not
Yeah, exactly.
refinance,
That
but kind of.
some
Yeah.
something like that. I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know the exact term, but then probably everyone would start doing that, and then everyone would also be a customer at the same time.
Hmm.
I mean, that's kind of like everyone have their own little community working with each other, have their own businesses, and at the same time be consumers while using AI to kind of like have they'll use AI as their employees so that they would have less overhead. And yeah, I mean, that's the thing that works in my head. That's what makes sense.
Yeah. Well,
that's
there,
that's
go ahead.
that sounds like more of a utopian version, right?
Mm.
Hopefully, we can land in that, and we pass the next few years, and
Yeah,
but
we
until
aim for
then,
the
like,
best.
how do we stay calm? Like, how do we stay zen? How do we just stay grounded and not like all have mental health issues during this time? This
Yeah.
is what the important question we're trying to figure out, Leo, today is like,
Yeah.
how do we carry on? How do we stay optimistic and hopeful you know, I remember when I was a kid and graduating high school and going to college, I was like, the world is full of opportunity. I can do any kind of career I want,
Yeah.
and I'll just have a beautiful job doing anything and life's good. But now it just seems like if you're young right now going to college, I mean, what kind of career paths are you going to start looking at, right? I mean, you can do some random, I don't know, business hospitality job or random accounting job. I don't know. It feels like we're such in a survival mode right now.
Yeah.
The It's so different.
Yeah, I saw something recently that was some kind of it was some kind of data that had polled college age or kids going into college. And there's essentially it was indicating that they're kind of like hopeless. Like why get a job or like why get an education?
Why? Yeah.
I like to think of artificial intelligence. There's kind of two ways I think of it. One is augmented
Mm.
intelligence. I think that's really key.
Hmm.
This is a tool, just like language and keyboards and fire and imagine being in the raw food business when we discovered fire, right? You'd be out of business, you'd be out of work. Um, um, so I kind of see it as augmented intelligence. And I do think it's important that we kind of lean into technology. It's just like, you want to learn how to speak and write so that you have opportunity. You want your kids to learn how to speak and write. Same kind of thing. And for me, like to your question about like, how do we manage? Like I'm in the same boat, obviously, I live in the Western world. I'm experiencing change on some level faster than I can perceive it. It's a bit overwhelming.
Mm.
Um, this is one reason why I have a breathing practice. What breathing does physiological, that rhythmic breathing. So it's kind of tied into the whole thing for me is all tied together. I'm a big advocate of the creator within each and every one of us. That essentially godlike power to form, creation, to participate with that which we are. But for me, the breathing not only is it help me treat the overwhelm and the anxiety and occasionally depression, but it kind of unlocks my brain in a way. Like you'll have revelations when you're breathing. You're turning down your fight or flight. You're turning down that stress response, that anxiety. And in that state, it's kind of like, the clouds parting and the sky shines through. So not only are you treating that anxiety physiologically, biochemically, but you're accessing more of your innate, what I would call natural intelligence. So you can navigate with a little more clarity.
Okay. I mean, it sounds really good and sounds very poetic and like I'm I'm very interested. But what could you show us like an example of what this breathing technique or breathing process that you would teach in the clinic for people? Like what exactly is happening in the clinic, in this breathing clinic that is different than what regular people are doing? What
Yeah,
separates it from just regular breathing? I
yeah,
understand, okay, you're saying that it's giving this visualization, it's like you're having this experience, but how do we sense that? What exactly is the
yeah,
process to do
yeah.
it?
So there's basically I see kind of two use cases for what I would call conscious breathing or intentional use of our breath. Obviously, we breathe to live,
Yeah.
but but you know, there's two kind of use cases. The one is the breath work, which I don't like to call it breath work. I call it active breathing. And that's where, for me,
Hmm.
I pretty much always lay down for this because I like to go at it pretty hard and I don't want to pass out or,
Okay.
if I'm sitting up. But there's
Let me
something I
try this.
can walk. Yeah.
Okay.
There we go. So
Okay.
yeah,
I'm not showing,
yeah, if
but
we,
I'm laying down.
yeah,
Promise.
it might, I guess maybe before we talk about it, maybe we could just do a short little exercise and have a little
Mm.
taste. Sound good?
Shall I stay laying down then? Yeah.
Either
Sound
way, it's up to you. I'd be laying down.
okay.
If I wasn't guiding you, I'd be laying down. Okay.
All right.
So what we're gonna do? Okay. So this is gonna be a form of active breathing. It's super simple. It's super short. It's not what I guide like in my breathing app or what we did at the Breathwork studio. But this will give you a short taste of the beauty of your breath. Super simple. Okay. So if you're listening to this, don't do this while you're driving. For real. Otherwise, you can do this sitting up or laying down, either way. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 10 breaths together. We're going to inhale through our nose, deep down into our belly, and then we're going to exhale through our mouth. We're just going to let it fall out of our mouth. Not going to push it out, just let it kind of fall out like water. And then on the last breath, on the 10th breath, we're going to inhale and hold. We'll hold for about like 10 or 15 seconds, and then we'll let go. And that let go, just slow. That's going to kind of be the moment when it hits. All right? Any questions? All right. So in through the nose, out through the mouth, and I'll count for us. Okay, so let's just close our eyes, breathe naturally. And then we'll start together. We're going to exhale everything and begin. Inhale, release. Inhale, release. Inhale, release. Inhale, release. Inhale, release. We're halfway there. Inhale, release. Inhale, release. Inhale, release. Inhale, release. Last one, we'll inhale and hold. Holding. And release. How do you feel?
Relaxed.
Oh, definitely feel more relaxed.
Yeah.
Feel more like calm for sure. Like earlier, I was
gonna
going
start
on.
sleeping.
I was going on a few rants earlier today, but now I don't have it in me to go on rants anymore.
Nice.
No, that's the power of. Is that sorry, pranayama? I've heard of that. I'm not sure what that is though.
Yeah. I mean, it is. It's not traditional pranayama. So prana is essentially life force in, I want to say it's Sanskrit or Pali. I believe it's Sanskrit. And then yama is basically like, it's like form or practice. So yeah, it's ancient yogic breath practices, go way back. It's said that the Buddha never gave meditation instructions without first breath awareness. And so to complete that thought from earlier, so there's the two sides of the street. There's the active breathing, which we just did, and that's just a little taste. It goes way deeper than that. And then the breath awareness is they're kind of both doing the same thing. So active breathing will kind of cleanse you from the aspects of the self that could be like based in fear or worry or regret, or false. It could even be like false identity stuff, personality stuff, glitches in our
false identity is like thinking I'm an idiot when I'm actually not an idiot, right? But
sure.
Like those kinds of negative thoughts coming in.
Yeah. Or I mean, it can go so far as I am this body in this person. It can take you all the way to that I am kind of enlightened states. And also like when you do the rhythmic breathing, like for these extended periods of time, which is what I mostly facilitate, when you do that over time at about 11 to 15 minutes, most people will start to get some really deep shifts happening. So like you'll experience pretty much the whole range of human states are available there. You'll see stuff that you're carrying with you. You'll go into dark spaces of your consciousness, but you'll be in more of a witnessing state. You'll be kind of watching it happening. So that's the breath work, but you can also go into bliss. Like that's, I mean, I see kind of breathing, the active breathing, having two sides of the street. Most breathwork facilitators are on one or the other. There's agony and there's ecstasy.
Okay. What's the purpose for each one? Like, why are you breathing for agony and why are you breathing for ecstasy? What's the effect?
Well, you don't really choose your adventure. Each session will take you where you need to go in a way. Your breath is guiding you. But what I'm getting at is that some teachers will be like trauma healing and, deep kind of like soul cleansing work, which is awesome.
Okay.
And then on the other side, you'll have like one of my favorite facilitators. Her name is Lisa De Narvaez, and her method, she calls it Bliss Point. But she is an ex electronic DJ, so she's now like maybe 50, and she would come into my studio. People would be paying like $70 for an hour with her. And she would pack it out. So it'd just be like wall to wall, people are stacked on each other. And then she would just crank my stereo at the studio to the point where like our neighbors are like, hey, what's going on over there? And that's the ecstasy side of the street. You can get super high on your breath. Yeah.
That sounds fun. Drop the breath.
Yeah. In fact, there was one session where three different breathers were, two of them were definitely having some kind of a full body orgasm, but all three of them were like in this orgasmic, like, yeah.
Okay.
God damn.
How does that work though? Okay.
Yeah, it's, I asked the same question, and there's a lot of science going into it now because it's trended a lot. Like, I mean, it's I think 1,100. If you Google search term the word, if you look at Google Trends and type in breathwork worldwide, it's like 1,100% growth since 2017 or something, just around the time. So it's really picking up speed, and as it does, I think Johns Hopkins is doing some research on it, and there's a lot of questions. But what it looks like is the hypothesis, the kind of scientific theory that I think is probably accurate. So it was in like, I want to say 2013, research out of Michigan discovered dimethyltryptamine is within the mammalian organism. They found it in rats. I don't know if they've found this in humans, but DMT is in the human body at similar volumes to serotonin and dopamine. And it's just like, it's been off our radar because we classified it as as an illegal drug for so long. So that's the first thing. It's clear. In fact, there's a book I think called The God Molecule or something that's all about endogenous DMT. But it's obviously part of how we, it mediates our experience of reality in a very big way. We used to think it was just, essentially it got dumped from at birth and death. It was like maybe the doorway into this human experience. But now we know it's a lot more than that. Then the other thing are some of the studies that have started in like, I want to say 2019, some papers, 2019, 2020 out of Michigan. And, they've located it to the pineal gland. So we now know that essentially the pineal gland or the third eye, I don't like to use woo-woo language, but this is where that DMT is coming from. And then there's a hypothesis from one of the researchers that I think is probably somewhat accurate. he's hypothesizing that endogenous DMT is essentially transported through cerebral spinal fluid.
Mm.
So when you're undulating, with your breath, you're for long periods of time, you're kind of moving that through the body. There's a lot of theories around it, but there's also a connection to oxytocin and dopamine and serotonin with active breathing as well.
Interesting.
Wow, that's incredible.
It also involves a lot of like body movement, and there's obviously technique to how to move your body while doing the breath work. So where can you learn these techniques? Because like you mentioned also like I'm pretty sure people would be interested in how to get a full body orgasm while breathing.
Yeah.
Like
Same.
that's insane.
Yeah.
Like I'm still still trying to process this. Like you can get high, you can have an orgasm, you can have all of these weird things. You can activate DMT through your spinal fluid. I'm trying to understand like what is like the biological process of this happening, where like what's activating these different processes. How does that happen? What's the scientific explanation?
Yeah. And as I said, there is a lot of science coming out. And of anyone, I mean, I've been deeply looking for that science for a long time. And like I said, a lot of it's coming out now. There's only, in fact, there wasn't a lot of research money in it until I want to say around COVID. And now it's like, oh, we've got this study going on, this study going on. So I shared with you kind of the meat of what I know on the getting high side of things. I have a hypothesis that essentially, like, how, so when I had that experience at 27, I was not looking for it. I wasn't using psychedelics. It was a very profound experience in the shower, of all places, of course. But it was a very highly altered, non-ordinary state. My sense of self was kind of permeating my perception. It was, I would call it like a non-dual state. I was everywhere. But my hypothesis, so when I was unpacking that, I found the research of this American philosopher named Ken Wilber. Are you guys familiar with integral theory? Yeah.
No, what is that?
Okay. So integral theory is the life's work of this American philosopher named Ken Wilber. He's written over 30 books. He's one of the philosophers on the Matrix Philosopher's Notes. He's a teacher of the Wachowski brothers.
Oh, wow.
I ended up spending a bunch of time with him. I was invited into his kind of personal circle and spent over a year kind of meeting with him. But the day after that experience in the shower, this was 2009, I was Google searching. I was like, WTF just happened to me. I don't know what happened to me. I had no context. And I found this framework from integral theory just through Google search that talked about states and stages. It's from integral theory. And what it says is that states, you can kind of states of consciousness are essentially like horizontal. They're ever present in our consciousness by nature of being human. So, Buddha nature, Turiya, non-duality, ecstasy, bliss, enlightenment, all of these things are underneath the personality, if you will. And then stages are these vertical dimensions that we move through developmentally. They're sequences. So you can have a non-ordinary state experience from any stage of development, but you will interpret the state through the lens of your stage. So that kind of ties in that my sense is that a lot of what's happening is the result of essentially turning down the thinking mind. You could say the ego, and I'm not demonizing the ego. Turning down the fear, but also there's the physiology of kind of that rhythmic breathing. The breath has a direct correlate to our experience of life. So, you get cut off in traffic and, the breath is just mirroring our psychology,
True.
And so when we breathe like that, we're essentially shutting down, we're disengaging the parasympathetic nervous system. And I think that we get access to these states on some level, just kind of free of charge because we turn down that erratic, fearful state.
I totally agree with what you're saying, Leon. From my perception experience, it's what we were talking about earlier with the dopamine. It's like we're always so plugged in, we're checking our phone, we're checking yada, yada, yada. But then when you actually sit down for a while and just meditate or do yoga or focus on your breath, it's so transformational, and you actually start tapping into things and letting things come out, because we're always so plugged in. And maybe that's why in the shower too you had that experience too, right? Because when in the shower you're not texting or chat
Yeah.
gpting random
Yeah.
recipes, you're so unplugged. And it leads to
The
that
water
kind
just
of
like you're just letting the water flow as well, and you're just,
Yeah.
enjoying the smoothness, even the sound maybe of the water falling and like washing over your body.
it's spiritual.
That alters also, yeah, it's an
Hmm.
Hmm.
experience.
Hmm.
Totally. And yeah, I think a lot of people. I wish a lot of people would have more access to that. What do you think about like who is able to go through these kinds of experiences? Because I have a feeling like if you're totally stressed out about bills, about money, about you don't have a house, or um, I don't know. It's like I'm thinking about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's like it seems like this kind of work applies to that higher level where you have love, you have community, you have safety, and you're trying to tap into that next level, which is your
Hmm.
spirituality and um, identity. All these kinds of things. I don't know. From your experience, does this kind of breath work with like more all kinds of people, or is it for a more niche group?
Yeah, I think that the best time to practice active breathing is when you are struggling.
Mm,
And that's been my experience of it. For me, one of the biggest little like drivers or like cues for me to lay down and do some breath work is when I am really struggling.
mm-hmm.
There's a comic that I saw this sketch that's like it's this like old goldfish that like looks back, or some fish that, but you could tell he's an old man, he's an old fish, and he says to these two younger little tadpole fish, said, "Hey, so how's the water, boys?" And they go, "What water?" So I
Yeah.
think, it's kind of like, consciousness, the breath, we literally are swimming in this. It's a part of our
Yeah.
deepest primal nature. And so, yeah, I think it's, at the very bottom of the hierarchy of needs, right? It's the first thing you
Yeah,
need,
totally.
breath.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm.
True.
It sounds like a little bit like a psilocybin or other kinds of psychedelics, where some people are using it to come up with art and like really like trying to, I don't know, expand the universe and think of ideas, and some people are just using it to help deal with trauma and all these kinds of biological stressors. It does make sense how like breath work can apply to different people and have
Yeah.
different functions
Yeah.
for wherever you're at.
Yeah.
Um, that makes sense, right? And what about like the word in yoga they always use the word
Or
yeah.
Kundalini. You bring it up into the nose.
So what is
Um,
that?
yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Mm,
there's a couple of things going on there. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. So on the exhale, so there's the science of that is that at least there's two parts that I know to it. One is that it upregulates, it basically generates nitric oxide.
Mm.
Um, have you guys heard of nasal nitric oxide?
No.
no.
This is
What's
it's
that
such a,
about?
yeah, it's such a key. So I want to say it was like 1999. The scientist who did the work around it, around endogenous nitric oxide, won a Nobel Prize for it and for
Mhm.
their work. And in fact, I want to say nitric oxide, it might have been 1999 Time magazine or something like that, called it the molecule of the year. There's, as far as I know, there's two ways that we get nitric oxide in our body. One is through nasal breathing, and it's almost like fairy dust. It has like a what's it called, a half life of like 2.5 seconds. And then the other is like green leafy vegetables. And apparently, like these, from what I know, and I may be wrong, but apparently these are like the only two ways that we get it in the human organism. So it's really important. So here's the thing with nitric oxide. It's essentially a miracle molecule. The scientists who won the Nobel Prize, they had a more difficult time finding functions in the human organism that were not either facilitated or co-facilitated by nitric oxide than were. So it's basically, it's essential to the operation of essentially more of our human organism than not. So as far as like everyday breathing, you always want to be breathing through your nose, always. And there's other reasons for that: filtering the air, conditioning the air. It just does the lungs a lot of good. But you're getting that nitric oxide, so you're improving your digestion, your immunity, your energy. Your sleep is going to be better. I actually tape my mouth at night. Have been for 4 years.
Oh wow.
If you lay down on your pillow on the side, whether or not you think of yourself as a nose breather, you will be breathing through your mouth. So just keep that closed. So nitric, I'm trying to remember the original question.
About yeah.
Oh yes, yes, yes. So when you're exhaling, like when you're practicing breath work, in fact, I need to put some of this tip into my breathing app. When you go on an exhale, especially if it's a big one after a hold, you want to either sigh or and that will get you, and you'll actually feel that tangibly. You'll go, oh, that's better. It deepens the So you're upregulating nitric oxide when you do that. But you're also basically pressing the what's it called? The vagus nerve. You're engaging the vagus nerve. And that's the big nerve, that kind of like the trunk of the tree of our nervous system that goes and connects to all the other little branches.
Okay, gotcha. And that helps with like relaxing you, the nitrous oxide.
Yeah, and it helps with like literally every function of your organism.
Okay.
It's like stimulating. It's like, almost like running some water through the network of streams,
Oh, wow. That's so powerful. I mean, like you think about how ancient this is, right? But how little people know about it.
Absolutely.
It's kind of mind-blowing. And so how hard it is to actually learn about it too and get all this information. It's like you said, there's the research now, but why is it starting just now? I mean, if this thing is so ancient and there's been people practicing it all throughout, why? And it seems like it's useful, it helps people. Why is this not, bigger than it is?
Well, I think it's, if you look at the actual market size, like from just like a market perspective, breathwork is still, it's like under 1% of the search interest of yoga. And we're kind of shifting as a society. I think it has a lot to do with, things like the American dream and advertising and pharmaceuticals kind of running their course, and us humans being like, yeah, it doesn't work. And we're also moving from gross to subtle to causal. So we're moving more into, soon, I think, we're going to like, let's say, visualization, for example, which is super subtle, is going to become a mainstream technology for well-being. But we're moving up the ladder from gross, like, lift weights and we're going from like basically like fitness to like nutrition to kind of yoga, meditation. I think it's a little weird that meditation trended before breathwork because it's out of sequence kind of, because it's more subtle, right?
Yeah.
But we're realizing,
but we're getting there,
We are. Yeah. We're realizing that.
Go ahead.
Well, the source of our experience is it's coming from a causal dimension. It's like we all know people, like I know people who had the worst childhoods, and they're just tapped in. They're just some type of a personality that chooses faith and gratitude, and it's just like it's incredible, because they can kind of transcend all the odds and create these epic lives, and that's just That's coming from the causal realm.
What? Okay. Well, so when you say causal realm, what can you elaborate a bit more on that?
Belief systems,
So, hmm
interpretations of the world around us. Um,
hmm
yeah, like core personality stuff. And obviously, like
okay.
for me, I went through childhood trauma and the way that I interpreted things when I was a little guy, I'm having to deal with now and have
Mm,
been for
Yeah.
10, 15 years. But that
hmm
form, it forms us. How we choose to interpret reality forms these, what I would call causal dimensions of self.
hmm Something that I have noticed is that people at a younger age, when they're not in touch with the causal or their belief system, whatever they grew up on, um, they tend to rely mainly on just like fact-based research, and just, they are completely separated from this concept of spirituality or their faith or whatever are they associate themselves with or grew up on. But then somehow over time throughout their lives, certain experiences tend to change their perspective on their belief systems, and they change their approach, their perspective. I don't know what exactly is the experience that happens, but it's like they start seeing more, or maybe they become more aware. Um, I don't know if this is something that you've also witnessed yourself or have experienced yourself. Care to share your opinion on that, on this point?
Yeah, it seems to kind of go in one of two directions. It's like we either
Yeah.
grow up and wake up. It's like Ken, this philosopher, he says basically the process of evolving yourself as a human um, is um, waking up, growing up, and cleaning up. And whether we do that
Yeah.
intentionally or just by how we adapt to life as we get older, it seems like we either do that, wake up, grow up, and clean up, or we kind of go the other direction. Neuroplasticity. I know I can feel that neuroplasticity, particularly the last few years. Since COVID, I went through
Mhm.
some really gnarly stuff. I had to close businesses. I was in a relationship with a violent psychopath, unbeknownst to me, who basically kind of tried
Oh,
to
wow.
trap me and essentially ruin my life if I didn't stay with her.
Sorry to hear
Really
that.
messed me up. Yeah, but I can
That's good you got
see
out of it.
like
Yeah.
yeah, eventually it was gnarly. It was stalking and defamation and all sorts of stuff. Um, but um, I have to kind of carry my cross every day, if you will, metaphorically. I
mm,
have to choose
hmm
gratitude over, bemoaning my fate when I go through things like this,
hmm
which is really hard to do. When you're
Yeah.
really going
Yeah.
through hell, it's like, fuck this. What did I do? Right. But you can almost always find it. Like I can trace what I went through back to basically a lack of self respect that made
Okay.
that that actually compelled me to forgive her and believe her after the first incident. That's on me, right? So we can always
Wow.
track
Yeah.
back that sovereignty. Like if you're in a situation, you know, you're there because of your own consciousness, and that's hard pill to swallow when it's gnarly.
hmm
Yeah,
It's so hard to control everything outside in the world and all these
yeah,
random events, and sometimes it does feel quite hopeless. But
yeah,
I like to believe that you can control yourself, your thoughts, your perceptions,
yeah.
your emotions. In a sense, like you do have control. And hey, buddy.
Hello.
This is
And
Cosmo.
that's it's
Hey,
something, hey
Cosmo.
Cosmo, something worth learning about. Side.
Um, it is. Yeah. I mean, it's important to, like how you put it, wake up and then grow up and then clean up. Obviously, there are people who never wake up, and that's the
Yeah.
issue. So maybe is there a certain process that they can well, the thing is, obviously, for them to wake up, they have to be aware that they're not awake. So that's like maybe the initial point.
Yeah.
Like, how does one even find out that they're not awake? Like, what's obviously they can't actively do it, but maybe there's a certain thing that happens that
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think? Like, is there
Yeah.
something that can
I think
happen to make them awake?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's like, have you guys heard of subject object theory?
What is that?
It's pretty
No.
cool.
What's that? Yeah.
It's a fundamental principle in psychological development that was essentially pioneered. I want to say it was a Harvard professor, Robert Keegan, I believe. Anyhow, basically, subject object theory says that the subject of one stage of development, who we are identified with now, what is not in my awareness, what I believe I am, becomes the object of the subject of the next stage of development. And
Huh? Sorry.
yep.
That was a bit, yeah, it was a bit complicated to grasp.
Explain it.
So if you,
Can you repeat that?
the subject of one stage of development, the I am, the identity, becomes the object
Yeah.
of the subject of the next. It's like Russian dolls, just
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the visual explanation is much nicer and easier for me. I don't know why.
yeah.
But okay. So, and what does so when someone sees this happening in front of them, that's when they become more aware? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes. So in
So
the go ahead.
just to add to that point, that would mean they would have to see this visually like they would actually have to see this happening in front of them, formalizing in front of them, but most probably projected by someone else, so not in their own perspective. So like it's like when you're watching a movie or a documentary, um, or let's say a movie. When you're watching a movie and you see a character that kind of depicts who you are,
Mm.
and when you see that character and you're like, oh shit, this seems a bit familiar. Is that the waking up process that you're referring to with the doll thing?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
and you could vaguely categorize that as self-reflexive awareness.
Okay, that's an interesting point. Obviously, you can also do that with other ways, like for example, reading a book, and if you relate to,
Yeah.
or maybe you're reading like a scientific article and you're reading symptoms of an illness or something like that. You're like, oh, okay, awake. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so this is one thing, this is why meditation can be such a universally powerful practice, because we're essentially witnessing our consciousness. It also speaks to essentially you guys have heard of multiple intelligences, like emotional, moral, kinesthetic, interpersonal, cognitive. So it's said in that model that the cognitive line of intelligence, which is as loosely described as what we are aware of being aware of. In that model, it's often the cognitive line is often considered to be the leader line or the governor line. So for example, you first have to go, you first have to have that recognition of what is maybe within you before you can do anything about it, really, to change it. I mean, occasionally development will happen subconsciously, and a lot of it does. But, I was a dick. Like, we can feel that, when we're off or whatever it is. For me, and meditation, as far as I can tell, in fact, Ken, this philosopher, says that meditation he's a huge advocate of meditation. Even though he's very secular, he's an academic philosopher, he's, meditation. It's a pure form of making subject object. But for me, I always really struggled with meditation. In fact, I did a 10-day silent Vipassana retreat. I was basically suicidal by the time I finished. And what I feel is kind of in some ways incorrect for most of us in the way that meditation is being propagated today, is that we're expecting, so many people struggle with it. I mean, it's most of us. We're sitting in meditation. We're going down to sit down and meditate when we're inside of a dysregulated nervous system. Like What you just, you drive through LA traffic, get home, now's my meditation time, and you're like, your nervous system's like, you know,
Yeah.
it's a bad time to meditate. So this is why, like for me now, only after getting into the breath, I can, and I only breathe into meditation. I never go meditation first, unless I'm feeling like I'm on vacation and somewhere, tropical or something, and it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
I know my nervous system is good.
It's the natural flow there, yeah.
Yeah. So I use to answer your question, the breath. In a way, it's a universal antidote. So it will meet you and you
Mm,
and you and me all differently, depending on the day, depending on our state of consciousness, depending on all the things, and it will give us. I would go so far as to say exactly what we need. But that subject object is
mhm.
a hallmark of what happens in the breathing experience.
Interesting. Okay. Um,
The ahas, the revelations that come from active breathing are actually for me, other than like, yeah, I want to feel good, I want to be at peace, I want to feel bliss. Yes.
yeah.
But the ahas are right up there with those good vibes as to why I come back and keep doing it. I'll have, like, I've heard people, at the end of a session at my studio, we would open up the room. All the teachers would do this, it
Mhm.
was part of our format. We would open up the room and say, if anyone wants to, you know, share what they just experienced, go ahead. And I've heard the wildest things. I've heard people say, like, I realized I need to divorce my spouse today.
Oof.
I forgave my mother today. I got the title to my book today. So it's those revelations are like, they're just waiting under the surface.
You know, it's interesting that the concept that I thought of about when you were talking about this process was this is something I had a discussion with my friend a long time ago, maybe back in 2018 or 2017. Anyway, we were sitting around we were having like a bonfire out in the forest near his house, and back then I was a very talkative person. I asked a lot of questions because although like I would ask questions without thinking, like more of like an impulse question. The first question that pops in my head, I'll just ask it. Um, but in that moment when we were sitting down together, it was just the two of us. He We forgot exactly what the process was, but we did some sort of like meditation technique where eventually it led to us just sitting in silence, not speaking at all. And and at that time, like I said, very talkative, chatterbox, um, just always had something on my mind. Everything was quiet, and every question that I actually wanted to ask, I just answered myself. Like I took a deep breath and I waited, and then somehow the answer just it came to me somehow, some way. Like that's what I thought when you were talking about this process, and yeah,
That's beautiful.
thank you.
You know
Yeah,
that.
now I
Go
do
ahead.
that in the jacuzzi.
So how
Well,
do
in the
you do
sauna.
that? So you explicitly ask a question with like clarity and then wait?
Nowadays, I don't directly ask a question. It's just that so my head is just constantly thinking. It's just most of the time it's like random nonsense that doesn't have to be in my head.
Yeah.
Um, but in certain moments, so now I have a process where we have like here in the compound we have a, a gym, and we also have a sauna and jacuzzi. So what I do is I go to the gym, I do a bit of a workout just to kind of like release all of that internal energy, and then I alternate between the sauna and the jacuzzi. First jacuzzi, then sauna, just to kind of like relax and um, sweat out all the toxins. So in the sauna, obviously you're sweating, so you're just like releasing all of the toxins from your body. And then in the jacuzzi, it's kind of just like a relaxation feeling. Just, you know, I for me, I think of it as more of like I'm relaxing my muscles make after the workout, and just especially if like I had a tense week, and for some reason, um, it's probably because I am in my most relaxed situation. But when I'm just sitting in that jacuzzi, and obviously because no one uses the facility, it's very quiet, so there's no one there. It's just me, and I'm able to just think like very clearly on something very specific. And right now, because it's mainly focused on my startup, so all of the thoughts and ideas that are coming through my head are about that startup. And very, they're very accurate, sharp, and focused like concepts. They could be scenarios, maybe a conversation that I could have with someone, or maybe it's just an idea of what to do next. And then what I do is after that, after I get that idea, I implement it. And I notice like, oh wow, this is a really good idea. So now I've just been constantly doing that process because it's like that's the routine that works. That's the one that
Yeah.
I don't know if this is meditation, but it's the closest thing I got. What do you think?
I think it highlights a component of a lot of these practices that will get us to that
Mm,
clarity, like taking a walk. You know, like I take at least one
yeah.
walk around the park every day, getting away from our computer screens, if possible, leaving our phones at home. Even though it can be like,
Yeah.
the idea, like I need to capture the idea. What am I going to capture it with? I think that's actually, I'll probably start doing that. I do these walks, and you're actually bringing some really beautiful insight, because when you were saying that, I realized, well, when you're laying down and breathing, yeah, you don't have any devices, no stimulation. When you're on a walk,
Hmm.
I had those same experiences in the sauna as well. And I think it has a lot to
Yeah.
do with just like pulling away the distractions.
Hmm.
Yeah. Exactly. And also on the walk, like even just don't listen to music, just depending on obviously the person, but
Yeah,
sometimes, yeah, just you don't need the music. You can
yeah,
just enjoy the walk, even if it's just a
yeah,
short one.
yeah.
Anyway, a question me and Ali were thinking of yesterday that is a pretty random one, slightly off topic, but also on topic-ish. Something we were talking about before we started recording was the protests in LA. And the question that we thought of was, what would you, Leo Mars, what would you do if you were in Donald Trump's situation? How would you halt these protests? How would you calm people down? What's the process that you would try to go for? Obviously, this is
Oh my gosh.
just a random question, but
Oh man, it is pretty
hypothetical.
random. You know, that's fun. It's funny because I for probably a decade I've been telling my friends, like, by 2030 it'll be the end of representative democracy. We'll have technology running the government, and it looks like we're right on track. But so I don't know. I think, along with all the crazy shit that's going on in the world, we've had a senile person and a clown kind of, and I no disrespect, but like, come on, running our government. I think it's indicative of the end of an age. But to be honest with you, I I don't actually follow a lot of the news. In fact, I just found something went viral and showed up in my YouTube feed. It was only last night that I saw what was going on in LA. I don't. When did that start,
Yeah.
Ali?
Yeah, the past few days. I mean, Saturday it started, kept on escalating day after day after day. Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's still
yeah.
escalating
Yeah.
for sure.
It's hard to say because it seems like the system itself is flawed, and
Mm.
I'm kind of waiting it out. I think another 5 to 8 years and things will be very different. And so I actually used to dream, being in the nightlife industry and whatnot. My place was really, it was like top tier, right? It was winning
Hmm.
awards. I had A-list celebrities coming consistently. And so I got the sense of like, dude, like I can like play with the upper echelon of society. When I discovered LSD a few years later, I still had that like throw parties and like be on the inside of that high level in my consciousness. And I thought, if I could just like throw a party and have like the president there and, you know, whatever else, I'll put a little LSD in the cocktails and we'll transform the whole world.
Woo!
So I don't know. I would start, you know, if I were Donald Trump, I'd probably take LSD. And then
You might
and then
get a
make
heart
some,
attack. You might
yeah,
not survive that
right.
one.
All the McDonald's. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard for me to answer that question because I think the whole thing is pretty fucked.
Ah,
Um,
yeah.
Fair, fair.
what
Yeah.
about you guys? What would you do?
Oh,
Oh,
send the Marines. No, I'm kidding.
no. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
What?
They're already
I don't
here,
know.
man.
Maybe we could apply some breath work or something. I mean, to be honest,
100%.
me and if I was actually in that position, I wouldn't be doing what Donald Trump is doing. I wouldn't have, in the first place, I wouldn't have been being so harsh on the the immigrant community in LA because immigrants in general in the United States are, well, first of all, they're a massive representation. They're a massive part of uh, the population in a lot of states.
Yeah.
They represent a large part of the community. They also represent a large part of the economy, which is not,
Yeah.
which people don't actually pay attention to. They're just used as a scapegoat for a lot of issues to, by Republicans to kind of like push an agenda, which is fine. I mean, that's politics, whatever. You want to use that as a talking point, good for you. And because somehow it works and people listen to that bullshit. But is it the right thing to do? No, of course not. Fuck, that's terrible. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, the other day I saw this article about this. Um, I don't know, I forgot if he was a U.S. citizen or not, but he's originally Mexican, and he got deported for no reason. And then they brought him back, and somehow he's on drug trafficking charges. Like that is just so the process, the whole process of that situation is just so bizarre. Like
Yeah.
why is he putting on that, and why is he going through that process? Why was he randomly deported and then brought back to be facing charges?
Yeah.
It's Yeah, from my perspective, it's just bullshit. I mean, I wouldn't involve ICE so harshly on the immigrants, and I would find a way to actually make to kind of like assimilate them more into the community because you need these immigrants. They are a
Yeah.
vital part of the labor
Yeah.
force. They fill like 51% of the agriculture industry in the labor force numbers, and obviously many other sectors. But like, imagine if you just remove them, what happens? It'll be a catastrophe
Yeah.
for the U.S.
Yeah.
That's my take. I don't know.
I
What,
think a
Ali?
lot
What do
of
you think?
people they're suffering. I totally get how some people in all states, they're like they can't work, and then the healthcare industry is scamming them, and they're all broken bankrupt. And um, I I think UBI, like we discussed earlier, it's a major solution that should be implemented like yesterday.
Yeah.
Especially if
Yeah.
you want to play
Mm,
with all this economy and tariffs and Doge and making things more efficient and firing people. I mean, if you're gonna do that, you might as well give people a safety net, right? Because if
Yeah.
you don't have that, I mean, the people that are protesting, they're desperate. They have nothing. They have
Yeah.
nothing to lose. And once you have
Yeah.
people that have, a ton of people that have nothing to lose, then this is the result of that. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, I don't know. I think
so
helping people out, redistributing some of the wealth, making sure that everyone's taken care of and has their
Yeah.
health care and some their bills met, their basic things met, and that's one thing that they could do right now that could really
mm,
change America and really help calm things down. But I don't think everyone's working for solutions. They're looking for,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so um, insane right now. I know. I'm hoping for the best, but it's hard. Yeah, control other people.
Yeah.
I've learned that, and so I can only just focus on myself and being the
Yeah.
best version of myself and leading by example.
Yeah, I resonate with that. It does seem like, and I know we're probably coming to a close here, but don't mean to open a can of worms here. But so in
Now, the
spiral
end of the show.
dynamics,
I'm joking.
yeah, right. So in spiral dynamics, yeah, just turn me off. In spiral dynamics, it's basically, as you mentioned, someone mentioned, Ali mentioned Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Spiral dynamics, if you're not familiar with it, it's basically it's a more sophisticated model like that, similar, and it's based on these structures of values or stages of values that we shift through. There are tiers or stages of human development that we don't know a lot about, but that are postmodern, more or less. They're like the future. There's a very small fraction of humans operating at this level. And there are hallmarks of these stages, like outlines of those stages that we can kind of faintly see in developmental psychology and that perspective, sociology. And it looks to me like artificial intelligence or augmented intelligence, and also the networking up of all of the planetary information, is leading us to the end of nation states. Certainly, I think it'll go the end of representational or representative democracy within the next, Saudi Arabia, isn't it Saudi Arabia spending like $8 billion to go full AI government by 2028, I believe? I just saw an announcement like 2 months ago.
I don't know. I didn't hear about that. That's an interesting point. I know they spent 600 billion recently when the Trump visited, and part of that big massive investment is in AI, but I don't know about the government part. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's an interesting
Yeah.
point. Tell me more about it. What's happening there?
Is Riyadh's where's Riyadh?
Saudi. Arabia.
Saudi, yeah.
The capital.
It might have been Abu Dhabi. That's another country, right?
Yeah, the Emirates.
Abu Dhabi.
Yeah,
Yeah.
UAE.
Abu Dhabi is in the United Arab Emirates. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it might have been Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the UAE is actually so these two Gulf countries are heavily investing in AI. They want to like Saudi Arabia is investing in data centers in the US, and UAE just built their I forgot what it's called. It's like not Starlink, obviously that's Elon Musk, but something similar name to it. And
Stargate.
they're currently Stargate, yeah, that's the one,
Yeah.
exactly. Now they're on because they want to build they're like really developing their AI innovation there. And from what I understand is they were 5 years ago, they were like top 5 in AI innovation. Now they're in the top 3. I remember what's his name? Kevin, the billionaire, his name's Kevin O'Leary, I think. He said that in an interview. He was saying that when he was there, that their AI is almost on the level of the US and China. And he was getting like an operation done there, and the operation that was done on him was mainly by an AI, which is insane. Like the medical industry is now being run by AI over there.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
this goes back to the point that Ali was mentioning about people losing their jobs. Even doctors are going to be losing their jobs.
Dude, imagine going to med school for 30 years, spending $1 million, and then you come out and you're like, yeah, actually, AI can do this.
Yeah.
So crazy.
Yeah. But just to finish that thought, I think that we're going from basically we'll first see the end of representational democracy, and then I think we're going to see the end of essentially nations as we know them, and I imagine that'll happen within a decade of that first
So would we
benchmark.
just become like one whole nation ruled by AI?
Yes. This
this is actually something I've dreamt of when I was a kid. I used to say as a child, I was like, why can't we just have one government to rule the whole world, kind of thing?
Yes.
If AI does it, to be honest, fuck it, I'm on board. I'm on board. Let's do it.
With intelligence comes compassion. It's just your circle of care widens the wider your lens gets. So we've all experienced that. These like super neutral, pragmatic responses from these LLMs. It's like, Perfect. Yes. It's like there's no karma, there's no projection, there's no negativity. It's just very clean. Yeah, I absolutely
Exactly.
think we're one nation under God. We're one planetary humanity, and it's just I think we all know that. And it's like we're tired of the dictators, and we're tired of the marginalizing and the suffering. Yeah.
So a thought that popped in my head about how AI is just going to make this easier is that because we will have to do less thinking, because AI will be doing most of the thinking for us, we will be less stressed individuals, and we will just be able to enjoy our lives,
Yes. Be
not be
human
stressed. And
beings.
because exactly, we just be human beings. Exactly. Because
Wow.
I think the biggest mistakes happen is when human beings are stressed out and then they make bad decisions.
Totally. Yeah.
Beautiful. And that's a segue to learning more about your app, about breathwork. That's how people can, at home,
Yes.
learn.
Yeah. Go
Mm-hmm.
go breathe to ether. So it's called ETHR. This is actually my second app. It's really the best of what I have discovered since opening the studio, and the most powerful sequences. It's made to be accessible by kids and everybody in between. Super easy. If people are interested, including you guys, ethr.one is the URL. And there's a free 7-day trial. It's accessible on all devices. So yeah, check it out.
Check it out. That sounds good.
Awesome. Definitely. Well, Leo, thank you for coming onto the podcast. It's been great
Yeah.
having you on. Ali, thank you for being my favorite co-host. Guys, thank you for watching.
Shucks.
See you.
Ciao. We're out of here.
Uh,
Goodbye.
we're out of here. See you guys.
Thanks, guys.